and make sure that we've got some attendees, and we do. Okay. It's 5:30. We'll go ahead and get started this evening. I noticed that there are a number of people in attendance, which is wonderful. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for feedback tonight from the community. I'll describe the project initially, and then I'll open it up to the developer of the project to kind of explain what they're thinking. And then we'll open it up to questions from everybody if we don't have a lot of people. So essentially when we open it up to questions, then there's free flow of conversation. The developer can answer your questions, and there can be some back and forth. I just ask that you can either raise your hand online, or you can just say, I have a comment, and then I'll call on you. I can tell who's speaking. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. Let's see if I can do this right. You see Sarah Seha Bennett is also on the line. She's one of my planners, and she's been working with the developer on this. So if I struggle a little bit, I think I got it. Okay. She may have to jump in and save me here. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. So the location for the project is, it's a 1 acre parcel located at 320 Esser. The current zoning is an R1M, which typically you would find just single family residential lots in an R1M, but it does also allow bungalow courts. Bungalow courts are more like a cottage type development, and it's multiple units on one lot. The R1M zoning does allow more than 1 story in height. It can be 2.5 stories, I believe. I'll let the developer kind of describe what he's planning over there. It does, though, bungalow courts have to go through a special use permit process, which is somewhat like a zoning process. It actually goes through the same process. There's a public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission, which will be June the 6th, I believe. June the 6th in the council chambers, and then it moves on to council for their consideration as well. So not only do you have this meeting to discuss it, you'll have an opportunity before the Planning and Zoning Commission on June 6th, 6 p.m. in the council chambers. And then when it moves on to council as well, you'll have another public hearing at that time. So multiple opportunities for you to give your opinions, state any questions you may have. I know Mr. Robertson is on with us as well, and he's always open to discussions, so you can reach out to him as well. But this is the location of the site. And let me find and here's the site plan. This is the proposed site plan. Let me pull it up a little bit. Now this can change a little bit. Staff is looking at it right now for, I think the last discussion we had was looking at the driveway length and so forth. So this can be modified a little bit before it goes to the Planning and Zoning Commission. But essentially they're looking at 8 units on the site with what appears to be maybe a little clubhouse. And I'll let Travis speak to that in just a little bit. So Travis, do you want to jump in and make everybody kind of understand what you're doing over there?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Wonderful. Hello, everyone.
Howdy.
Well, yes, as Laura described, this is a residentially zoned lot. For those, I'm not sure who exactly all is online and part of the meeting, but you're all probably fairly familiar with this site, um, almost directly across the street from Boerne High School, across from what I believe is Deer Creek Road. I may be incorrect in that.
Yes, you're correct.
Okay. This has an existing entrance into the site, and then there's kind of a guardrail. So it creates some unique parameters, some unique challenges to develop this. Um, when looking at this with the owner, I'm not the owner, I am the developer, you could say, of the property, going along with the owner, who has just recently purchased the property, but have helped in the design of, first of all, what would fit here, what would be conducive for the site, for the neighbors, for the neighborhood, low impact. It rather than try and rezone it to a commercial use, to keep it as this new bungalow court use, seems like a really good fit for this unique site. If you could go to the site plan, Miss.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so what you see there is indeed there's an existing home on this site, and that is what's in the center of the circle. So the intent was try to, first of all, save that. I don't believe it has really any historical value, and architecturally it's not great, but it does have enough to be able to potentially save and perhaps create a little common or clubhouse, as you mentioned, Laura, with some additional sort of community feel for the bungalow courts. The red dwellings that you see are approximately 1,100 to 1,200 square feet in size, or about 1,100 square feet as drawn there. No attached garages. You can see they have sidewalks coming up to the front doors, set in such a way, really, this is an existing tree survey. So the X's that you see would be the only trees that would have to be removed. All of the other trees, as noted, are actual in place and were saved in the design. This also then takes into account the low impact development features, bioswales, potential drainage, according to the natural sort of flow and topographic survey that we did on site. The driveway that you see would create here currently a two-way circular, fire capable, serviceable ingress and egress for all of the sites, with some dedicated and or shared parking, and even in this case a couple of common parking spots for guests to come. So based on the existing driveway, the existing topo, the existing trees, it's really not conducive as an acre lot, even an R1M, for someone to build, I would say, an estate residence being on the TxDOT highway. We felt that this would be a really good solution for the property. And I am open to questions, open to conversations, chats, visits, whatever may be needed.
Great. So I'll go ahead and open it up to any questions that folks might have. Me trying to enlarge my screen. Let me just stop sharing. There we go. Now I can see everybody. If I need to bring that back up, I will. I just want to make sure I don't miss anybody. Is there anybody that has any questions for Travis?
I have this is Mike Hagan. I have a concern about the parking situation. It looks like there's only adequate parking for the residents themselves. If anyone has a guest, anyone wants to have some kind of a social gathering, then where will people park? And then the other thing, when you look at the drawing, can people park on the curb in front of each bungalow in addition to the allocated parking spaces? And if so, then all at once, it's not really a two-way circle. It ends up being more like one way, and possibly very, very narrow. So if there were a fire, it could be a real hazard. So that's my biggest concern. I think probably the 8 units looks like too much to me, basically compared to everything else around it. You have single family homes everywhere else. I understand trying to maximize the revenue you can achieve from this development. So I have nothing against that, other than it seems to me you could have fewer units, maybe have a garage. And yes, the cost per unit will go up, but I don't, in this day and age, I don't think that's a problem trying to find housing here. It seems to all sell quite well.
So Travis, do you want to respond to that?
I kind of
Sure,
threw a lot out there.
Yeah, you did. First of all, I am trying to maintain the widest driveway possible. Matter of fact, I've been going back and forth with staff on some of those things. If you'll notice to this, what I'll call the plan south, there is a couple of parallel parking spots there.
Right.
We were trying to maximize. I think the requirement would be actually for probably it would be one requirement spot. Laura, is that correct per the R1M, or is it?
It's based on number of bedrooms. Is that correct, Sarah? I don't know if she can hear me. I believe 2 bedrooms. I believe 3 bedrooms requires 2 parking spots.
Right.
Are these 2 and 3 bedrooms?
I think they're 2-bedroom. Yeah, they're 2-bedroom units. But Mike, to answer a little bit of your question, obviously we've tried to dedicate so that it wouldn't clog the fire. There's also actually requirements. The fire marshal has to review all plans and approve this. And you have to paint that in such a way as well to limit people being able to park where it would cause a concern. I definitely think 8 units is not grotesque. As far as garages, that's really challenging. If you were to try and add a garage, if you can imagine, if you could put the with the site plan back up there, Laura.
Sorry, let me pull it over.
And I'm not sure this demographic of these in this, they'll even would possibly necessitate a garage. But if you can imagine, you have to have separation and driveways to each of those. And we also have impervious cover rules that we've got to limit, sort of and be within amount of impervious cover. So when designing a development, there's a whole lot to balance on that. And we have to take all of those into consideration.
I guess I have really no idea, and you may not be able at this point to share what you think the cost of each of these would be if someone were to come in and buy one today.
So Travis, that is a good question. Are these for sale or for lease, or do you know?
I don't know the answer to that question yet. Obviously, it's on one lot. You'd have to set up organizationally from a real estate perspective. I'm a real estate broker as well, but you would have to do that in such a way that they could be purchased, whether they're leased. But no, I don't think that's the intent of this call, is to discuss the obviously anything that's new construction, first of all, which this is obviously new construction on an expensive piece of land, is going to be high dollar and much better quality, especially than what was there. I'm not sure if you're familiar with what was there.
Yeah.
And you may not be completely familiar with what was there, because I physically cleaned out a lot of it in the back over the past couple weeks. So there were actually, quote unquote, multiple units at this location, storage units and things in the back there. But the demographics of what this would either sell for or long-term lease or whatever that may be, I don't have that currently.
I will tell you, there is another development. It's much larger than this, and they have 20 some odd units, and they're bigger units, but those it's a bungalow type situation, and they're selling those. They're talking about selling those for over 800,000. 2,000 square feet and up. But it's kind of the same scenario. So you're correct. Nothing is cheap in Boerne.
How many
Not
square
the-
feet would each of these have?
As I mentioned previously, Mr. Hagan, these are drawn at 1,100 square feet.
1,100, okay.
So I think the intent would probably be kind of more of a high end, people that move to Boerne, maybe they're in a situation where they can't afford to buy that $700,000 house. This is a really nice, really well done community place where they could live. Even the cottage development, I live 2 doors down from the cottage development on Oak Park, at the corner of Oak Park and Fry. And I know what it costs to build things. And so you mentioned the garage, Mr. Hagan, when you average in unconditioned space and porch and patio space into a design of a home or residence, the cost per foot goes up dramatically because you're only dividing it by the cost of air conditioned foot. So really the intent would likely be to have sort of a high end or nice kind of rental, maybe on the long term, but set them up in a way where they could be potentially sold. So many people are trying to seek an opportunity for something less than $700,000, $800,000. And this is one of the sort of only ways to do that, is to have, I would call that moderate. I think that's what the I can't ever remember, Laura, if R1M equals medium or moderate, but
I guess part of why I'm asking these questions is it's an acre. You could put 4 quarter-acre lots in there and have 4 really nice homes, be consistent with everything else that's around it. I live in Oak Knoll Circle, and I guess I'm trying to figure out why developers are always trying to get as much into as small of a space as possible. And I always assumed it was because you could achieve more revenue from the property. And I have nothing against that. It's just that, could you not sell 4 nice houses and end up with as much revenue for the developers? And then leave something behind that is more appealing to the general public. I walk by there all the time when I walk the area here, and I agree, what's there now isn't necessarily appealing to the eye, but it's also not obtrusive at all. You just kind of, well, yeah, it's there. It's one of the older homes. It's somebody that's been here probably forever that finally sold that. But what I envision with this drawing is you're going to drive by, and we have a few places here in Boerne, it's the same way, and all you're going to see is a bunch of cars stacked around. And I don't, it's just something I would like to avoid.
so let me respond to a couple of things you said, Mr. Hagan. You made a sort of broad assumption in the ability to subdivide to 4 lots. I would encourage you to try and subdivide something in the city of, and see what all the parameters are that it actually takes to do that. I do that frequently. And so believe me, we look at every solution to a property. Some things you have on this particular piece of property is you'd have to have frontage for each lot to a public road, which, by the way, that's a TxDOT road with a guardrail and a drainage easement in front. You'd have to have utilities to each of those lots. And the setup, the shape of those lots would then not really be extremely conducive, and especially based on trees, to be able to build on. You'd actually have more driveways coming out to the TxDOT road. So
I guess I was envisioning a cul-de-sac, one entry in with a turnaround cul-de-sac. Yeah,
yes,
2 lots are going to be probably the side of them to Esser, and then 2 would be in the back corners. But like you said, I'm not an experienced developer, but you're going to have to run power, and you're going to have to deal with the drainage easement and everything anyway.
Well, it's just not quite that simple, Mr. Hagan. Unfortunately, a cul-de-sac is a public road improvement, and it creates a fire turnaround in the middle of it as well, potentially there. And there's a whole lot to that. So unfortunately, it's just not that easy. to look at that and say, oh, well, you could just create a cul-de-sac. Unfortunately, I think it used to be potentially easier to do those things, but that's definitely not the case. I personally take great pride, I don't know that I've met you before, sir, or there's many others on the call, but maybe you could speak to. I take great pride in any project that I'm in, having it be something that you want to walk by. Matter of fact, that's specifically what I do here in Boerne, is seek out things that you currently don't want to walk by and make them something that you want to take a picture of and put in the Boerne brochure. That's my goal, is for anything that I touch or am involved in to be sort of a heritage quality product. Now, I can't speak that I'm the one that's actually going to construct the buildings or whatnot, but I have specifically worked with this buyer, who is a local Boerne gentleman and businessman, who has entrusted me a great deal to try and design something that will represent those qualities.
Will there be any kind of a wall or anything like that running along Esser?
Not that I'm aware of running along Esser. Again, there's existing sort of concrete drainage detail there in front of the property. There's a tall fence. There's some fencing requirements, some of which are already met, but there's some fencing requirements to a abutting property. And some of this property actually butts to a city easement. Laura, you may be able to speak to that, but I believe the south side is actually an electrical easement that has a sort of gate over a bridge coming back to Esser. So there's a little bit of a natural buffer to the south already.
Travis, that was one of my questions. This is Amy Shoemaker. What is the distance from the rear of the bungalows to the adjoining property line?
What are your setbacks on there, Travis? I think is what
I'm
Right.
measuring on my 1/4 inch scale currently because I can't recall everything. That appears to be, hold on just a second.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, that's there.
Yeah, I was trying to solve that. So R1M, the minimum setback for the rear with no alley would be 15.
Right.
So 15 feet from the rear of those structures to the property line, Amy.
Thank you.
Correct.
And Travis, you know that I'm real familiar with the Oak Park cottages, and they're ones that when I heard about this meeting, I was concerned about because, and I know you didn't have anything to do with developing those or building those, but the parking there is an issue. And I know that the 2 bedrooms that they only are required 1, and they've got 2 parking spots per unit. But when there is a party in those cottages, there isn't a place for anyone to park except out on Oak Park, which that is a road at least you can park on. So that's one of my concerns here, is just you can't park on Esser, and crossing Esser from Deer Creek isn't a great idea. So wondering how that would be handled. And then also was just wondering on the old house that's there. I mean, I think most of us that live around here, we're not real sad to see that that's not being rented out anymore. That had been kind of a nightmare for a lot of the adjoining neighbors, and I'm in Hidden Haven or Hidden Oaks. But just, is that house really worth saving for a community room when there might be more uses for parking and that kind of thing?
That's a great comment. Obviously, the house architecturally would need a lot of work. I've discussed that some with the owner. I've looked at the bones, appear to be actually in decent shape. It's a pier and beam house. It needs, a lot of work. I don't think I would currently be allowed to even fill in let's say the majority of that island due to impervious cover rules. If you were to try and create a parking lot there for, folks to park on, I don't know that would necessarily be feasible. I think I've got 19 spots here. 19 spots which yes, at 2 per, then leaves 3 extra. I don't know if there'd be possible to create other decomposed granite spots or something. I mean, we could potentially look at that.
Yeah,
Travis, could you not use pervious pavement?
You potentially could use pervious pavement somewhere. I know
You
there's.
only get a certain percentage credit for.
That's right. They
impervious
only give
pavers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sir, I may have missed this. I'm Jim Ayers. I live in Hidden Oak subdivision, also been here for 25 years. Has there been a traffic study? Did I miss comments on that? Or is that too early to figure out whether or not the traffic in the Boerne is, high school is obviously challenging now?
There is a traffic impact analysis required as part of this, and that will be submitted and performed to the planning and zoning as part of their review.
So there are requirements, and Travis has mentioned this, there are requirements for impervious cover. That's how much of the lot can be covered with parking lot, driveway, buildings, and so forth. And if I think I'm correct here, R1 M is.
Laura, this is Ty. What if
Yes,
you
sir.
took one building away and then had pervious cover? I mean, would that be an equilibrium of getting rid of,
Yes, it would
right?
be.
In theory?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Laura, this is Bill Kessler. I also live in Hidden Oaks. I've been living here for 20 years. May I make a comment?
Of course.
As it's proposed, I think the design on that lot is completely inappropriate and doesn't fit the surrounding area. That lot on 3 sides butts up against 3 single-family areas. And to put that many units on a lot of that size with that many cars going in there, I think is completely inappropriate for the city to approve something like that.
Okay. Thank you.
It does not fit the area. I just don't see it happening. I heard what Travis said. To me, what it smacks of is a developer coming in, trying to take a lot that's too small and to put too much on it to build as many places they can to sell. And having driven by that for 20 some years, I think the people that live in the area know the house, they know the location, they know the lot's a little different and unique. But frankly, that's not a problem for the people who've lived here for a long time. That's maybe a problem for the developer, but I think they're trying to fit something into a unique lot that shouldn't be done the way it's proposed. So I can't see many people that are in my neighborhood being happy to see like something like that being built there.
Thank you for your comment.
This is Brent Hand. I've got a comment if I may make one.
Can you tell me your name again? I'm sorry, I just didn't hear you.
Brent Hand.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Travis, how many stories tall are these units going to be?
Currently, this design is a single story. As Laura mentioned, the R1M does allow for 2-story, but currently these are drawn as a single story. So these are very small, 1,100 square foot, kind of cottagey, quaint type units. Yeah, I don't know. I'm looking at the comments. I guess there's kind of a running comment over on the side here. Of folks.
Right, most of these Travis are about traffic and the entrance and exits and.
Yeah. So first of all, a couple of things as far as I hear developer coming in. I've been in for a long time. I'm a resident here as well, longtime resident as well. backs to this lot. I'm not sure what the gentleman that said this doesn't fit at all.
My name is
Um,
Bill Kessler,
Yes, sir.
Kessler.
Yes, sir. So, Bill, what would you see there if you don't see this?
But you see, sir, that's really not my problem, okay? I'm not, I acknowledge the unique character of the lot. But as a homeowner that bought in Boerne in single-family homes in that area, I mean, every house around there is, I would not want to have that butt up against the backs of my property in Hidden Hooks, especially if I didn't know whether they were going to build. I mean, you could even build a two-story house there, or 2 stories rather than 1 story. But I don't think it fits that location, and there's too much to try to put onto a 1-acre lot like that. So it's not, the burden is not on me to say, what do you think would fit? It's just a situation that exists with a unique lot size where that is. And it's not really for me to suggest how I think you should develop it. But I think as a homeowner in the area, I have a right to tell the city I think it's inappropriate.
Yes, sir.
So Ms. Rizzuto has made several comments. Did you want to speak? Or are you able to? I see several comments from you. The last comment was she'd rather see a community garden or green space.
Well, sure.
Thank
I've been living in Boerne for almost 12 years. And, I can tell you that I came to Boerne in part so that I lived in an area where at night you could see the stars and you could smell the fresh flowers, and very little one by one every year. We've had development in the community. And it's just kind of sad because some of these areas, I understand we need to develop them, but you're talking about a specific area that's right across the street from a very busy high school. And on the opposite side of the street, we have a great pasture with cows. It's sort of what makes Boerne. Not entirely sure that everybody really wants to have more congestion, more noise, more foot traffic, more parking, and everything that kind of thing is going to bring. Just my
you.
opinion, for what it's worth.
I appreciate that. Is there
Laura, there's
any-
also a few people with hands up.
Let's see, Brent, well, let's give Jason a chance. Jason hasn't said anything yet. So, and Brent, I'll get back to you in just a second.
Yep. Hey, Laura, Jason, and thank you for having this meeting. I think what I would like to say, and what I think Bill Kessler and several others on the call have also been saying, is that my property does back up to this particular lot, and I think what I've heard is that while the current plan is for 1-story houses or 1-story bungalows, there's no guarantee that it's going to be 1 story. I've heard that there's an intent and a sense of pride in doing similar types of development, but it may be way too early for us to understand construction types and really kind of what this should or will look like when it's all said and done. We've asked about how close are those units going to be to the fence line, and we've been given a minimum, and so I don't know if we should expect that those bungalows are going to be 15 feet from the fence line, or if they're going to be set back a little bit further. But it sounded to me like they were going to be set back to the minimum required. And then when you look at kind of all that and some of the ambiguity and what's been explained, and you look at the master plan and how the city hired people to come in and to lay out a vision for how we should expand. And this area is surrounded by single family houses that don't back up to one another within 15 feet. And that there's just consistency within our part of the neighborhood. Everything that we've heard feels like it's inconsistent with the vision set out by the city back in 2018. And it seems very, very out of place to consider a bungalow type neighborhood with 8 units that are 1,100 square feet that provide very little privacy to the neighboring houses. And I think that what you're hearing is concern from the community, because it just feels so out of place and it feels very forced. And I think that you're going to continue to hear concerns from people in the neighborhood, people that share a fence line, because it just seems inconsistent with the overall neighboring uses, and it just seems incompatible.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hand, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I just want to echo the sentiments of a lot of the callers. I completely agree. Yeah, when it comes to looking at this property, it just seems pretty dense about how things are going to be built. So what are your proposals to mitigate noise, from having all these units, from having 16 cars back there, from having visitors, come and go, deliveries, everything else. In the evenings, how are you going to mitigate light from that property? Again, this is all just on one small acre, dense, a lot of people, a lot of houses. How do you propose those are going to be mitigated?
I will tell you before Travis answers, we do have dark sky friendly regulations that they will have to follow here. But I'll let him speak to the specifics of that.
Yeah, I see. I again hear a lot of things there with folks concerned to back up to something from a 15-foot deal. First of all, these are intended to live to the front and the community area. The dark green shaded area that was there is intended to be sort of a collection area with, again, the buffer to the south zone. If Laura can bring that back up.
Sure. Sorry, I keep unsharing it.
Oh, that's okay.
When I share it on the screen, I lose being able to see everybody.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, not your fault. I'm just trying to figure out how to do it. There we go. There you go.
While you're doing that, Travis, can you tell us how long the new owner has owned the property?
The new owner has owned the property. We've been going through this, started this process during the due diligence phase, but has closed on it several weeks ago. Again, for the folks that back up to this property, I can tell you there was 6 or 8 folks living there in storage units. I'm not sure if y'all were aware of that, but this is something that is, I always find it interesting. We're trying to make things better. I would not call this necessarily a dense, I don't know definition wise from a planning standpoint, Laura, but definitely not dense. We look at how things live. You can see the dark green area to the south.
If I may interject. So what I mean by dense is right now it's zoned as R1M, right?
Mm-hmm.
With that
Yes.
zoning type, you could again, like others said, potentially put 3 or 4 homes on there. 3 probably realistically with the size of that lot. So now you're going from 3 homes to 8 or potentially 9 homes. So to me, and I think a lot of the other community members, that seems fairly dense, considering what it's zoned now and what you want to do with it.
I don't think that would be considered dense, sir, from a development standpoint. If you looked at I don't know what the minimum square footage of lot would be in an R1M district, Laura.
It's 7,800 square feet.
7,800. Yeah.
There's a little man.
Right, so that would be 6.34 or something. I'm doing the math in my head. 6.75, something like that.
That the minimum lot frontage is 65 feet. So you're looking at 3 homes there.
Right. However, you're looking at something and saying you can do something that, based on the parameters of the site, are really not feasible. You first of all have to get TxDOT entrance ability to even enter a TxDOT road that's not even part of city development.
You'd probably have to have a street or a shared driveway some
Right.
kind. Travis. The street will eat up about 72 feet. You probably have to have at least 60 feet of right of way. I'm figuring that.
Right. Yeah. understood. I'm just saying right now it's zoned as R1M, you know, and so you're asking to change it to essentially R4B zoning for bungalows. And so
No, sir,
you're-
we're not rezoning the property, but it's a special use permit. It's slightly different, and Laura can explain that, but
It's more of a, like approval of a site plan, essentially.
that's right.
Right, but also I'd like to note, you know, I think if it was rezoned to bungalow courts, you could only have, I believe, 1-story dwellings, whereas right now you could potentially have story dwellings.
That's correct.
Right, and I heard a lot of comments about ambiguity, as if there was some inference there of trying to snake through. You have to realize that, again, the property owner has owned this for several weeks. We have designed this during that process. As you can see, people always want to know what color the cabinet hardware is at this phase, and that's just not feasible. You have to look. Someone asked me on the feed over there what else I had developed. This is a brand new zoning. No one's developed a bungalow court yet, to my knowledge. The cottages I know received some increased density. Just personally, I'm not a fan of the cottage development. I live 2 doors down from it because architecturally, I don't think it's necessarily done right for a lot of reasons. And that's my own personal opinion. I mean, there's a difference in between zoning and how something is done. So having consistent roof lines, having consistent shape and size, having so that you see the open space rather than see the roof lines out at Esser. The cottage roof lines that are jammed up to the rock wall in front. I personally don't like the rock wall that's on Oak Park. I don't think it's native looking. It's more cave and stone. So the types of materials that are used, those are not things that come up in a special use permit. They're just good discernment of a development. I restored the gas stations on Oak Park, the Golf House, the Oak Park gas station that's currently being redone, and the lofts behind it. That was an instance, again, we had some of these same questions, but that's a highly desirable, I think, well done, high-end residence that's there on Oak Park. Yeah, so, you know, every lot is completely different, and I think you have to look at it. I don't think we can shut the door. I think we have to create things. I think most people in the community would actually be pleased that this lot has traded hands and is going to be redeveloped to something that's nice.
So I think we can agree that we're happy that that won't be there anymore the way it was. That I don't know why the city allowed that to exist as long as it did, but what gets put in there, I think the neighbors should have input, and that's why we have this type of meetings. And it sounds like we have a disagreement of what we think should be in there. I believe that we should, since this area is surrounded by single family homes on 3 sides, putting 8 units of these bungalow courts is inconsistent with that type of housing, and I will oppose it.
So there are a few people that have not had a chance to speak yet. Is there anybody else on that would like to make some comments or ask some questions?
People that were.
I would. My name is Leslie Matter.
Thank you.
And I am in the same subdivision. My backyard literally backs up to that property. When you turn into the subdivision, I'm the second house on the left.
Oh, right.
I know firsthand about the people that were renting from there. I've heard everything and anything. I've seen them come out of living in shacks out there. Multiple people on that property were living there. I have talked to the owner as well multiple times to find out what's going on with the new development. And I'll be honest with you, I would rather have a family of 5 or 6 living there, or even 7, than have all these homes built there, people coming in and out constantly. I know that house is it's a sight for sore eyes. I pass it all the time when I'm taking my kids to school. But having all those homes on that site and tearing down what you all say you're gonna, try to salvage some of those trees, who knows? It's a beautiful property. It has a lot of potential for a house. I mean, even if you go on the listings for homes for sale and you see that lot, if you scroll through that listing, you'll see a beautiful home that has potential, and it's one home. I think it's a 2-story, it might even be a ranch, but having all those homes back up to our back porch, it's going to be a sight for sore eyes. It's not going to be good. And that's my opinion. I've commented multiple times on the right-hand side, and I'm glad I got, an option or opportunity to talk. But like I mentioned, I've seen what goes on over there. I mean, I've witnessed it firsthand.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that. I do want to make sure everybody understands a special use permit. This isn't going to make everybody feel any better, but a special use permit, you actually are approving a site plan. So when it comes to tree preservation, alignments of buildings, fencing, screening, even as far as materials, can be conditions of the approval. So just keep that in mind when you're making comments about it. So we want to hear those comments so that we can move forward and maybe make some of those consideration. So thank you. Jacob Gallen's hand is up. Jacob, did you want to speak? I can't hear you. Let me see if I can unmute you. No, I can't. So I don't see a microphone, Jacob.
We'll figure out how to get on there.
I don't know if I am or not.
Hello, is that better?
That's Mr. Reeves.
Yeah, did you hear
Hello,
me?
can you hear me?
Oh, now I can hear you, Jacob. Go ahead.
Okay. Yes, thank you. I live next door to this matter. I live in the Hidden Oak subdivision, and my property backs up to the lot. I wanted to echo everything that she said in her statement, as well as something that was in the chat by Mr. Bill. We purposely purchased our lot, which is on a little more, about 1/3 of an acre, specifically because it had a typical subdivision feel without feeling like we were right on top of each other. It gave us a little bit of space to have some privacy. Knowing that we bought on a busy street, there were some things that some concessions we were willing to make to buy here. The neighborhood has been here for a period of time. We love our neighborhood, we love our neighbors, but just very, very concerned for the population. Getting back to the density issue. Regardless of what the definition was, as someone else said in the chat, it doesn't fit and is inconsistent with the rest of the Hidden Oaks subdivision. So I have major concerns about what it does, kind of long term. The way that it's built now, the way that it's designed now, should I say, our property would be backing up to parking spaces and not a 2-story. But that was exactly my concern when one of my neighbors brought it to my attention that we had this Zoom meeting today. We have a privacy fence, but 2-story homes, kind of losing some of that privacy, losing the feel and the intimacy of kind of what we purchased when we moved to Boerne about 10 years ago. This really has me and my family concerned.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Reeves, did you want to make a comment? You were trying to talk earlier.
Well, I don't know if you can hear me or not. Can you?
I can.
Oh, wow. I did something right.
You did.
Well, my biggest concern, and I think it's been pointed out, is the traffic over there. There's going to have to be a stoplight there for the entrance to the high school sooner or later. If you're adding 16 cars coming out of that one area, and I assume 16 based on 8 houses or 8 buildings, the traffic alone is already kind of a deterrent. We lived here. I'm just 4 houses down on Hidden Haven, so the problems that Brent and some of the other people are talking about doesn't affect me because I don't back up to that. However, boy, I see their point of view. That's why we moved to Boerne, because we were living in San Antonio with a similar situation, so we got out of there. So my biggest concern is the traffic. And then it just came to mind, and I'll play devil advocates for a moment. Why does anything have to be built there? I know that it's private property, and I know the owner can do with it as he pleases within the law. But I look around Boerne right now, we have apartments going up over by Walmart. We have apartments going up behind the YMCA and the police station. We have apartments over there on Herf Road. We've got apartments going up all over this place. Boerne's not going to be Boerne any longer. And I'm really concerned that sooner or later, Esser will have to be widened, which now is really going to be cutting into my neighbor's properties. Those are my concerns. Like I say, I'm a 73-year-old retiree. Someday I won't even have a voice. But right now you're hearing mine, and I appreciate your time.
That's fine. Thank you so much. Is there anybody else that has any comments? I still see some people that have not. You don't have to if you don't want to.
I have one more question. This is Leslie Matter again. I'm not sure if I missed it earlier, but the fencing situation, are the fences going to be taller? Is there going to be like some type of, a taller fence in case this were to go through? I don't know. I mean, how would that impact the fencing situation? Because I don't want to look in my backyard and see a parking lot with a bunch of cars. That's a big issue for me.
Travis, do you know if he's planning to fence this all the way around, or?
Yes, there's already, I believe, tall fences in some sections back there. First of all, the assumption of two-story is incorrect. However, there's two-story homes in every production neighborhood in this city. This is currently drawn as a one-story. There are fencing requirements at the back fence, and some of those are, I believe, already tall to the west and to the south. I don't think I have any further comment at this time.
So no plan for fencing right now.
Laura, just to
Yes, sir.
clarify, since it is an SUP, so folks know, planning and zoning and the city council could ask as part of the SUP to have height fencing, just so people
Yes, sir.
know.
That can be one of the conditions of approval.
I had one more question. On the southwest corner, it looks like some kind of drainage pond or something there. Just was wanting clarification of what that is.
Oops.
Just wanting to make sure if the water is draining into the Hidden Haven neighborhood or out of it. Because right now I get a lot of neighbors' water and I want to make sure I'm not getting additional water.
Travis, you want to speak to that
Sure. Yes.
on the site plan?
This is based on the topographic survey of where the drainage currently goes, so that it exits the same place and it has to exit at the same rate. This is depicting, which basically this has to have a drainage study as well, in that green area to the south to make sure that exits. That is an easement. That's a city-owned piece of property there to the south.
Along here, Travis?
No, but on the other side of the property line. Laura,
gotcha.
yeah, that's an electrical easement, but it will, it's required to have a drainage study to drain out at the same manner.
So the requirements of our ordinances are that they don't release any more water than they already are. So if there was some flow going through your yard from the site right now, they can't change that, but they don't stop it either. So in other words, it's got to be same conditions across the board. So you should not see any more water. And that's what the detention ponds are for. So if they were releasing water before, so they may allow it to build up and then release it slowly when it crosses somebody's property.
And so Laura,
That's
hey,
what-
quick question on that. And so you
Yes,
said
sir.
same conditions. So there's not a parking lot there right now. And
Right.
there is not a situation where you're going to have vehicle fluids, contaminants coming into that section. And so would part of the requirements of the same condition not only impact flow, but also hazards?
We do have low impact development standards as well, which are fairly new to the city. And that cleans the water before it leaves the site. So those features will, and Travis kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, I'm not sure that anybody understood what low impact development was, but that's what it's for, is to clean the water before it leaves your site. And you put in, berms, hopefully it's, natural landscaping things, but actually there's some technical things they could do as well to clean the water from their site.
Yeah, just to clarify for LID, the first flush, the first amount of rain is where all the dirty water is. And per our ordinance, you have to clean that X amount of rain through some feature. Travis mentioned bioswales. There's various different things per code. You have to do that. And then my internet went out for a second, but I'm assuming this hasn't been answered as well, is when you do a development, it has to be the same flow as it was before that. So wherever that water is draining, nothing can change upstream, downstream. So just so people know, again, whether or not this happens, that those are our rules.
Right.
Laura, this is Bill Kessler again. If I wrote this
Yes,
down correctly, you indicated that on June 6th, it was going to be before
the Planning and Zoning Commission, yes, sir.
Easy, okay. And is there a subsequent date for the next, or whenever it will be brought before the?
Before council?
Yeah.
So first of all, we haven't posted public notice of this.
Okay.
So y'all, anybody within 200 feet will be getting a letter from the city saying, advertising the P&Z meeting.
Okay.
Council, we don't do the same mailing. So let me see if I can figure that out for you real quick. Assuming that it does go on the June 6th meeting, should post, you would see a public hearing July the 12th
Thank you.
at council. But just watch for that first notice when you get that. And we also, we post a sign out there for zoning change as well. And you can look on our website too, but if for some reason this gets delayed, the owner wants to go back to the drawing board and redesign and so forth, likely what we do is have another bond meeting to kind of explain what's going on and what the updates are. That's ideally what we like to do. If not, we post it all online for the meeting as well. So you'll have some ability to see that before it actually goes to P&Z.
I think it's worth everyone who's here, including Travis, think about, is there a option that works? Are you okay if there's one less house?
Oh, Ty, you cut out. I think what he's asking is there's something that would be acceptable to y'all as far as density. And I think that's really what Travis was trying to get to earlier too, is what do you feel is right here? He's not asking for you to design it for him, but is 8 too many? Is 4 too many? Is 6 too many? Anybody have any comments on that?
I commented earlier that I would envision possibly 4 single resident houses with garages. And I know, and Mr. Robertson, I know you said that's not feasible, but that would be consistent with what is surrounding the property for all of us that live here. It would not create any more traffic than what would go in there with a few other houses. Traffic being and parking being a real concern, and we never really got any ideas on where would overflow traffic go, because as someone said, you can't park on Esser. So to me, to answer that question, and Mr. Robertson, you asked earlier, and there have been some other comments, but I could see 4, or if you want to stay with the bungalow plan, maybe 5, but just for the parking issues, you need more green space.
Thank you so much. Mr. Gallen also said 4 homes maximum he felt like that would be reasonable. Mr. Willison, Councilmember Willison is having internet issues, so he's trying to hang in there. He keeps jumping in and out. So
Yeah, sorry. I mean, just long story short is what y'all are doing, which I came back in, is again, get an idea for what y'all want. Obviously, it's ultimately up. If Travis wants to take this to P&Z regardless, that's up to him too, right? That's his right. But the point of this is to get y'all's opinion, so that when we do have, then this does go to P&Z, that P&Z members who are listening, staff knows what y'all have decided, and then they can make a decision. Or if Travis thinks that he can work in something, maybe it doesn't get as far as you want, but changes it, that's also an option. That's the whole point of this. So just to clarify.
yes, sir. Thank you. I see Mr. Anzalito is also on the line and your hand is raised. Mr. Angelito is one of our P&Z commissioners. Did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, Laura, actually, I have a question.
Mhm.
The question is just addressing that point about coming off of Esser. What does that alleyway or driveway have to be? Does it have to handle two-way traffic? Like, how improved does that driveway have to be?
Oh, the driveway, well, the entrance into this area will have to be paved concrete. It can be pavement beyond that point. But he's got to meet fire code, all of those issues as well. So he's got wide paved area just to make sure that he meets that criteria. I don't know, Travis, you want to?
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
It's all right. Travis, did you want to make a comment on that?
Yes, the driveway is intended to be two-way there at the Esser frontage. It's not currently wide enough to meet, so it has to be widened and improved already. But yes, that has to be two-way traffic. And obviously then the intent of the two-way drive was to be able to have flow and flexibility in and around the loop.
If Travis, if this was a smaller development, could you fit a hammerhead in there to deal with the fire code?
There you go. Sorry, I was trying to unmute my computer and it wasn't working. Your question is somewhat, you're talking about, could you put a hammerhead? It leads back to, are you talking about separate lots? That's much different. When you're talking about lots, I'm sorry that it's just much different to try and create a platted lot. It's really not very feasible here to subdivide this and create lots. So yeah, that's just a much different project. It's apples and oranges, really.
Okay. Thanks, Travis.
Thank you, Joe. But let's see, Brent, your hand is raised again.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. It seems like a lot of these questions that we're asking are probably answered in the special use permit that was submitted. So would we be able to get a copy of that to review it?
Right now, all we really have is the site plan to look at and go by. We're still kind of tweaking some things because staff is looking at the layout and so forth. So fire has looked at this, just so everybody knows. Development services have looked at this, had a comment about the driveway depth. So we're working on that. That's why at the beginning I said we're still kind of tweaking it. Sarah, what is their app? I can look and see what their application looks like. But a lot of your questions are not actually answered, and they're answered on this with the site plan. So I think what you've got right here, other than, let's see.
So what I mean specifically, I'm looking at the special use permit. It's supposed to have, letter of justification, why they want to do it, how it's going to enhance the community. It talks about the development impact, parking and loading and noise and all that other stuff. So and again, these are a lot of the questions that we're asking that are supposed to be answered in the special use permit that's submitted. So I just think that would be helpful if we could eventually get that.
Right, it's a little early yet. We have bond meetings in advance of all of that. And you're right. This is the application and there's none of that detail, but we've been talking to Travis and just at least initially kind of wanted to get y'all's feedback before we go much further with it. So sometimes it's a little bit early.
Okay, got it.
Hopefully that makes sense. But yes, you'll have an opportunity to see it.
Okay, I was just reading through the code and yeah, it was mentioned that it was supposed to include all those aspects, and apparently it hasn't yet.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Sometimes we'll hold a bond meeting before they've even made application if we feel like it's something that needs to be discussed. And we want to hear the feedback from the community early on before they spend too much money trying to put something really specific together before they've even heard from the community. So We'll have all that information for the planning and zoning meeting. We just don't have it for the bond meeting yet.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's see, I gotta stop sharing. I'm sorry. I'll figure out how to do this better one of these days. Ms. Shoemaker, you've got another question?
I do. And I come from a land development and home building background, so I'm probably pro development more than most people. And I have plenty of friends that are looking for something similar to this in Boerne. So I know there's a demand for it, whether it's retirees that don't want a yard to maintain anymore, or single women. That's the primary one I know of that are looking for something smaller. But again, I just want to say, Travis, that my main concern is that parking, because I know that's such a hassle in the Oak Park one. And just knowing that there's not any other places to go and park safely for this. I think a lot of the other things can be handled, but that parking and then understanding more on the drainage is my biggest concern. Without spending a lot of time, I can't figure out what the number of units could be without having a lot more information. But I know there's a demand for this kind of product, and I know what Travis builds is normally very high end and very beautiful. You know, and so I don't know if there's anything in the permitting process that can speak to some of that, other than, you know, the materials used. You're not going to get Section 8 housing if they're using high-end materials and doing something very expensive. So that's kind of where I'm thinking right now.
Well, and that was one of the questions that had popped up, and it's difficult to answer because we really can't regulate against certain types of housing. So I'll just have to ask Travis to answer, is this geared towards any kind of Section 8 housing?
No, ma'am. There's no intent for Section 8 or government subsidized housing in this development.
Great, thank you. You see, Councilmember Heiler's hand is raised. Did you want to jump in there, Lucas?
Absolutely, Laura. And just a clarification there, I'm a P&Z commissioner.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Yes.
Travis, I'll start off with maybe just an easy question, and then gradually maybe ask a couple of tougher ones. Not to put you too much on the spot, but whenever I think about city services, and this might actually be for Laura, but city services, specifically like trash service, how would that work in a bungalow court like this? I know Travis said this is essentially the first one, or the first bungalow court being considered in Boerne. How would trash services be conducted? Would that be individual trash cans at each bungalow, or would it be one central point?
It can go either way. I think they've got room to take trash out in front of their yards. Travis, do you have any other ideas on how that might be handled?
Yes, if you look at the site plan, we actually had intended, I'm sorry to have you keep bringing that up.
No, I'm sorry.
Best way to reference.
There you go.
So you can't barely see it, and I wish I kept my cursor, you probably can't see my cursor, but to the north, I'll call it plan.
Right here?
Yes, see that how it's outlined? It's intended that, and you have room, Lucas, to put individual garbage units and rollouts out to the curb, I believe, based on the loop and the size of loop for garbage service. And then we just had designed in preliminary. Now that may go away depending on the requirements for the throat depth of the driveway, but that was intended also to be someplace that could be shielded, and a truck could come in, back up, and get to a public spot or recycle bins or something. So we had sort of tried to plan on both, if possible.
So this is Leslie Matter again. So my house there's Jacob that's next to me, which is the first house on the property, and then I'm the second one. So essentially there could be a possible dumpster behind our homes, because you can go on ahead and say it's recycle, or it's a place to just put, your garbage, but it's a dumpster, essentially, correct?
It's a potential dumpster location of residential, no different than 16 green containers that are up and down your street currently. It's not a restaurant site, it's not a commercial site, it's residential garbage service.
The difference is on zoning doesn't allow dumpsters, if I'm correct, right? I can't put a dumpster out in front of my house.
True.
Okay,
So
thank
this
you.
is kind of this is somewhat of a hybrid. So I'll have to look into it, to be honest. We haven't run across this yet. It's kind of a hybrid between multifamily and commercial. Multifamily allows a dumpster. But single family it allows the big dumpsters, but single family does not. So I'll have to look and see how we would consider that under an R1M zoning, but a bungalow court.
And that doesn't matter to me. We simply had tried to draw something in that was functional or a secondary thing as well. I guess you wouldn't have a concern if there was 7 residential green dumpsters around in a circle, but you would if they were grouped together behind a common block wall. I don't really understand that because you're actually shielding it more behind a block wall, but it sounds as though unless it's an open space, there's nothing that's really desirable here. But we must find, and I'm truly shocked that someone would say they would prefer someone living in storage units on this property. However, I mean, these things, this is so preliminary, you just can't have the level of detail. We're happy to take the input and to design the best for the city and neighbors and make it a quality development.
Travis, I asked that question.
I was going to say, Lucas, I don't think you were done.
No, I wasn't. I asked that question and I thought it was going to be an easy answer. But I asked that question because I would assume that a centralized location, and in fact, now that I thought that was a parking spot, but now that you point that out, it appears to me that it's been strategically placed away from the residents, so there's minimized noise whenever it is approached or picked up by a garbage truck, which would be much better than a garbage truck driving around the circle and the amount of noise that may come from that. In addition, since there aren't garages, where would those 16, one trash, one recycling receptacles be placed? My point being that there could be an eyesore if there's not a specific place for them to go. So I think we can leave that there. I was just more curious. The next question, Travis, and this is just more out of curiosity. I hear the community asking about, the number of units being a concern to them. So, and I would think maybe specifically the 4 on the west side of the lot. Would it be a consideration that those 4 units be condensed to 2? So essentially you'd have, well, it's actually 5
There's
units.
5 units over.
Yeah, but minimizing the number of units and just making a larger place for somebody to rent or purchase once that's determined. So 2,200 square feet instead of 1,100. I'm just curious there if that might be a solution for both sides.
Well, first of all, I'm not here to negotiate anything on this call. I don't have the authority to negotiate on this call. And I don't think that's the intent of this call, is to negotiate something at this time. I would say that when you so easily, either way, you begin to cast demographics and so easily start to scratch units or enlarge units or add garages, man, you have to, it's to sit in a developer seat for one day to do a quality development that actually, I mean, the infrastructure cost on even doing this is astronomical. So you can't just even take the land purchase price. It's extremely costly and risky to do this. So I would just challenge good development over people simply throwing numbers of 5, 6, 7 onto a board. Again, I'm not in favor of, I'm not a fan of the cottages that are down the street from me, not because they're cottages. I just think there's some aspects of it that aren't great design. Could it be that we study this and there's some less density? I have to go through the owner and the input and all those things. I'm simply acting as a developer, but I don't think, and I won't answer the question as to what I'm willing or able to give up at this point. And I just would caution the community in doing that. You have to look at the whole thing. Let's say we grew the units, right? As Ms. Shoemaker's comment, let's say we grew the units from 1,100 to 2,400 square feet each, and we had fewer of them. Man, the cost of construction and the amount you now have to rent or sell that unit for is a much demographic. And the single lady, the retiree, probably can't afford to live there any longer because you've moved up past the gross rent amount that is not feasible. I'm not a Section 8 government subsidized guy. I'm not claiming this is quote unquote what would be defined as affordable housing under those assumptions. But you do have to look at what's an efficient and effective floor plan. How would a bathrooms and living room and 2 bedrooms lay out in a size and footprint? And we have done that. And could that be affordable for someone done in a nice manner? And then you can, we currently fit 8 on the lot with a common space to create community. And there's a whole lot of thought that goes into size, density, location, layout, direction, orientation, sun direction, trees. It's trust me, it's a tough puzzle.
Travis, I'll just say that I acknowledge this isn't a negotiation. It was more of maybe a rhetorical question being asked because clearly the community's not liking the number of units here. So I asked that question not to negotiate on this call here today, but to maybe ask you to consider it as an option. And I completely hear your position in regards to price point and who it might appeal to. And then lastly, I'll just make a comment. And I want for the community to hear this as well. I think if you take an opportunity to look at the developments that Travis has participated in, they're first class and some of the very best developments in the community, in my opinion. With that being said, I have a 1 acre lot directly next to my residence in Boerne that is for sale currently. And I would welcome this exact footprint here versus and built by Travis versus being built by somebody else. And so I just think that everybody should consider or look at what Travis has done in the community and what it looks like and what he has done to make Boerne better, because it certainly could be somebody else that's involved in this and they may not look the same as what Travis is considered here. So thank you.
Thank you, Lucas. Andrea, you've got your hand raised. Did you have a comment? I can't hear you.
Hi,
yet.
yes.
There you go.
Can you hear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I came into the meeting a little late, but I wasn't sure if it had already been addressed as to what the targeted rent range was for this property and the potential to sell off this development after everything is done. And then also, what is the owner's, I know you said that you can't say anything tonight, you're not, you can't confirm or deny anything tonight, but what is the possibility to hold another bond meeting to address the questions and concerns brought up tonight prior to the next meeting that's going to be in front of the Planning and Zoning Committee?
Can't hear you, Travis.
Yes, again, I don't think, I don't have the numbers. I would have to talk with the owner. This is a very preliminary process. and we're not here to speak financials to the public or advertise financials to the public, whether it could be sold or rented or what those are. And I don't think that's the intent of this meeting or these types of meetings, of the bond meetings. They would be, I would consider, high-end in nature, but I don't have the exact number that I would put out there. Regarding other scheduled bond meetings, I would lean on staff as they wish to invite or have these. I'm always open to talking with Laura and Sarah and planning and zoning members. I do frequently, daily, and would be happy to have those conversations as desired.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, you know, you don't have the permission to speak on behalf of the owner's intent tonight. I kind of do disagree in the sense that, you know, these bond meetings are to get with the community and find something that's going to be reasonable for both the owners and the residents, right? We want to keep everything in line with the intent of Boerne's growth and development. And I do agree that we need some affordable housing for other, you know, economic classes. But I think it is important to, you know, have these open dialogues between all of us. So I think, you know, if the questions that were asked, I would propose, you know, or ask that you go back to the owner, speak with them about the questions and concerns, and then we meet again at another bond meeting. Because, you know, the way I see it right now, this is just kind of a sketch, and it's really hard to speak at on something without knowing a little bit more detail with regards to the future that we're going to be stuck with. So that's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Is there anybody else that has any comments or questions for Travis? I don't see any hands raised. We do have all the comments as well, but I think we've addressed most of the questions. Ty, did you want to comment anything else?
I would just encourage anyone that wants to continue with the process. Obviously, staff will determine if another bond's needed. My guess is that this will probably go to P&Z with the comments, and then you had 2 P&Z members as part of this, so which is good. They'll have feedback based on the comments they heard, and then based on the makeup of P&Z we have right now, I know that they will make the right decision. Meaning, if they think that there needs to be further discussion with y'all, then my assumption is they'll table it, or Travis will make that decision based on his conversations with the owner that they might need to delay it so they can have further conversations. I
think too, what we'll do, Ty, if after Mr. Robertson talks to the owner and they determine they want to have another bond meeting and postpone things, we'll try to get the message out much earlier. Usually we don't have a whole lot of time. So a lot of you probably just got texts. Should have been Friday. But we put the sign out and so forth. So if we do that, be looking for the same type of messaging. So and the bond meetings are held once a month. Is it the 3rd Tuesday of the month, right, Sarah? 1, 2, 3, yes, 3rd Tuesday of the month. If not, then we'll be sending out a letter with the public hearing notification. So either we'll go out, not to say that we can't have another meeting even after the P&Z meeting. I mean, that certainly can happen, and we've done that also. So there's a mix of things that could happen from here. We'll try to keep you as informed as we possibly can about how they decide to move forward. But I thank everybody for their input tonight. Glad everybody got the message and was able to log on. That's always great to see a lot of people. We'll circle back with Travis and then let you know what the next steps are.
Laura, thank you for doing this.
Oh, you bet. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Travis.
Thank you, Laura.